The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky coastline as Marcus Thompson watched his mother struggle to lift her massive head from the shallow waters. What should have been a graceful movement for the magnificent albino dragon had become a painful ordeal. Her once pristine white scales were now covered with thousands of dark, crusty barnacles that clung to her hide like a living nightmare. Marcus had always known his family was different. While other children grew up with human mothers who packed their lunches and helped with homework, he had been raised by Seraphina, a rare albino dragon who had found him as an abandoned infant 23 years ago. She had cared for him with a tenderness that defied every legend about dragons being fierce and dangerous creatures. Now, as he stood on the weathered dock of their secluded cove, Marcus felt his heart breaking. The barnacles had been growing on his mother's body for months, starting as just a few small patches that neither of them had worried about. Ocean creatures often carried such passengers, and dragons were known for their incredible healing abilities. But these barnacles were different. They multiplied rapidly, spreading across her scales like a disease, and each one seemed to cause her constant pain. Seraphina's breathing had become labored, and her usual bright golden eyes now appeared dim and tired. The barnacles had grown so thick in some areas that they restricted her movement, making it difficult for her to fly or even move comfortably through the water that had always been her refuge. Marcus remembered the first time he noticed something was wrong. It was during their evening flight over the Pacific Ocean, something they had done together since he was old enough to ride safely on her back. Seraphina's powerful wings, which usually carried them effortlessly through the clouds, began to falter. She struggled to maintain altitude, and when they landed on their favorite sea stack, Marcus saw her wince as the barnacles scraped against the rocky surface. That night, he had tried to help by carefully attempting to remove some of the smaller barnacles with his hands. But each time he touched one, Seraphina would let out a low, pained rumble that made him stop immediately. The barnacles seemed to have embedded themselves deep into her scales, creating a network of painful attachments that grew stronger each day. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the only marine biologist Marcus trusted with the secret of his mother's existence, had visited their hidden cove 3 weeks ago. She had studied Seraphina from a respectful distance, taking photographs and collecting water samples from around the dragon's resting area. When she returned with her findings, the news was devastating. These were not ordinary barnacles. They were a newly discovered species that seemed to target large marine creatures with a parasitic intensity that scientists had never seen before. Dr. Rodriguez explained that the barnacles released a toxin that actually encouraged their host's body to grow more attachment points, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of infestation. Without intervention, the condition would continue to worsen until the host became completely unable to function. The worst part was that there was no known treatment. The barnacles were too deeply embedded to remove safely, and any attempt to scrape them off would likely cause massive trauma to the host's skin and underlying tissue. Dr. Rodriguez had seen similar cases in whales and large fish, and the outcome was always the same. The affected creatures slowly lost their ability to move and feed, eventually dying from the combined effects of malnutrition and the toxins released by the barnacles. Marcus refused to accept that fate for his mother. Seraphina had saved his life as an infant, raising him with patience and love despite the challenges of being a dragon, caring for a human child. She had taught him to swim in the deep ocean waters, shown him secret caves filled with ancient treasures, and shared with him the wisdom of centuries. Most importantly, she had given him a sense of belonging in a world where he would never quite fit in with either humans or dragons. The young man spent his days researching everything he could find about barnacle infestations, marine parasites, and dragon biology. He reached out to marine research stations around the world, carefully crafting emails that asked about barnacle removal techniques without revealing the true nature of his situation. Most of the responses were discouraging, confirming what Dr. Rodriguez had already told him. But Marcus was not ready to give up. He had inherited his mother's stubborn determination, and he was willing to try anything that might help her. He began experimenting with different approaches, starting with natural remedies that had been used by coastal communities for generations. He tried creating saltwater solutions with different concentrations, hoping to find something that might weaken the barnacle's grip without harming Serafina's scales. He researched the feeding habits of fish that were known to clean parasites from larger marine animals, wondering if there might be a biological solution to the problem. Every morning, Marcus would wade into the shallow water where Serafina rested and gently examine the barnacles, looking for any sign that they might be weakening or showing vulnerability. He documented everything with photographs and detailed notes, hoping to find a pattern that might lead to a breakthrough. The physical toll on his mother was becoming more apparent each day. Serafina, who had once been able to dive to incredible depths and sort of heights that made Marcus dizzy, now spent most of her time in the shallow waters of their cove. She tried to hide her discomfort when he was around, but Marcus could see the way she moved more slowly and carefully, avoiding any contact that might aggravate the barnacles. One evening, as they sat together on the beach watching the sunset, Serafina spoke to him in the deep, melodic voice that had comforted him throughout his childhood. Dragons could communicate telepathically with those they were bonded to, and her words resonated directly in his mind. "My dear child," she said, "I have lived for over 800 years, and I have seen many wonders and faced many challenges. This may simply be my time to join the great cycle of life and death that governs all living things." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face as he responded, both aloud and in his thoughts. "No, Mother. There has to be something we can do. I won't let you suffer like this. There has to be a way to help you." Serafina's large head moved closer to him, and despite the barnacles that now covered even her beautiful face, her eyes still held the warmth and love that had been his constant companion. "Your determination reminds me of myself at your age," she said. "But sometimes love means accepting what we cannot change." That night, Marcus lay awake in their cave dwelling, staring at the ceiling and refusing to accept his mother's resignation. He thought about all the times she had pushed through seemingly impossible challenges to keep him safe and happy. When he was 7 and had fallen into a riptide, she had battled the dangerous currents for hours to find him. When he was 15 and had become seriously ill with pneumonia, she had flown through a terrible storm to bring him to a hospital, risking exposure to help him recover. Now it was his turn to be the one who refused to give up. As the first light of dawn began to filter into their cave, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He was going to find Dr. Sarah Chun, the world's leading expert on marine parasites, who was rumored to be conducting cutting-edge research on barnacle biology at a remote research station in the northern Pacific. The journey would be dangerous and would require him to leave Serafina alone for the first time in his adult life. But Marcus was convinced that Dr. Chen's research might hold the key to saving his mother's life. He had read her published papers and knew that she was experimenting with new techniques for removing deeply embedded marine parasites without harming the host organism. As Serafina slept peacefully in the shallow water, Marcus began planning the most important journey of his life. He would need to travel over 1,000 miles across open ocean, navigating by the stars and the landmarks his mother had taught him to recognize. He would need to find Dr. Chen's research station, convince her to help without revealing too much about Serafina's true nature, and somehow bring back a solution that could save the only family he had ever known. The young man gathered supplies and studied maps, knowing that failure was not an option. His mother had spent her life protecting and caring for him, and now it was time for him to prove that her love and sacrifice had not been in vain. The Barnacles might be winning the battle for now, but Marcus was determined to win the war. The small motorboat cut through the choppy waters of the northern Pacific as Marcus navigated by compass and the position of the stars. 3 days had passed since he left Serafina in their hidden cove, and every hour away from her felt like an eternity. The weather had been rough, with strong winds and occasional rain squalls that made the journey treacherous for someone traveling alone in such a small vessel. Marcus had never been away from his mother for more than a few hours in his entire life. The separation was almost physically painful, made worse by his constant worry about her condition. Before leaving, he had made sure she had access to the deepest part of their cove, where the cooler water might provide some relief from the Barnacles' irritation. He had also left detailed notes with Dr. Rodriguez, asking her to check on Serafina every day and to call him immediately if there were any changes. The research station Marcus was searching for was located on a small island that appeared on very few maps. Dr. Sarah Chun had chosen the remote location specifically to avoid interference with her controversial research. According to the information Marcus had gathered, she was working with a team of marine biologists who were developing new methods for treating parasitic infestations in large marine mammals. As the fourth day dawned, Marcus finally spotted the distinctive rocky outcropping that marked his destination. The research station was built on stilts over a protected lagoon, with several buildings connected by walkways that stretched out over the water. Solar panels and wind generators provided power, and Marcus could see several small research vessels moored to floating docks. Getting onto the station without an invitation proved to be more challenging than Marcus had anticipated. The facility was protected by security measures designed to keep out unauthorized visitors, and his attempts to radio the station had been met with polite but firm refusals to allow him to dock. Marcus realized he would need to be creative. That night, he waited until the station's lights dimmed and then carefully swam to one of the support pillars. Using climbing skills his mother had taught him during their adventures exploring sea cliffs, he made his way up through the structure until he could access one of the lower walkways. The station was quiet except for the sound of waves lapping against the supports and the hum of electronic equipment. Marcus made his way carefully through the complex, looking for any sign of Dr. Chun or her research materials. He found what he was looking for in a large laboratory filled with aquarium tanks and monitoring equipment. Dr. Chun was working alone at a microscope, examining samples under bright lights. She was a small woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail, and hands that moved with the precision of someone who had spent decades working with delicate specimens. Marcus took a deep breath and stepped into the laboratory. Dr. Chun, my name is Marcus Thompson, and I need your help with a barnacle infestation that's killing someone I love. Dr. Chun looked up from her microscope with surprise and concern. How did you get in here? This is a restricted facility. I'm going to have to call security. Please, Marcus said, his voice filled with desperation. I've traveled for days to find you. I know you're working on new treatments for marine parasites. I have photos and documentation of a case unlike anything you've ever seen. Just give me 5 minutes to show you, and if you're not interested, I'll leave quietly. Something in Marcus's tone made Dr. Chun pause. She had dedicated her career to helping marine animals suffering from parasitic diseases, and she recognized the genuine anguish in the young man's voice. 5 minutes, she said. But if this is some kind of hoax or publicity stunt, I'm calling the Coast Guard. Marcus quickly pulled out his phone and began showing Dr. Chun the photographs he had taken of Serafina's condition. He had been careful to crop the images so that they showed only sections of scales and barnacles, without revealing the full size or shape of his mother's body. As Dr. Chun examined the images, her expression changed from skepticism to intense interest. Where did you take these photos? She asked. The scale pattern is unlike anything I've seen, and these barnacles, they appear to be the new species we've been tracking. But the infestation density is far beyond anything we've documented. Marcus had prepared for this question. It's a large marine mammal that lives in a protected area I can't reveal without permission from local authorities. But I can tell you that the animal is suffering terribly, and traditional removal methods won't work because the barnacles are too deeply embedded. Dr. Chun studied the photos more carefully, using a magnifying glass to examine the details. The host organism appears to have scales rather than skin, which is unusual for marine mammals. and the barnacle attachment points show a level of integration that suggests this infestation has been developing for months. That's exactly right, Marcus said. The barnacles seem to have created a biological connection with the host that makes them impossible to remove without causing massive trauma. Dr. Chun set down the magnifying glass and looked at Marcus intently. I've been working on a potential solution to exactly this type of problem, but my research is still in the experimental stage, and I've only tested it on small specimens in control conditions. Marcus felt his heart racing with hope. What kind of solution? It's a two-part treatment, Dr. Chen explained. First, we use a specially formulated enzyme solution that breaks down the protein bonds between the barnacles and the host tissue. The enzymes are derived from certain species of fish that naturally feed on barnacles, but we've concentrated and refined them to be much more effective. She moved to a refrigeration unit and pulled out several vials of clear liquid. The second part involves using controlled sound frequencies to disrupt the barnacle's ability to maintain their grip. We've discovered that certain ultrasonic patterns can cause the barnacles to release their hold without damaging the host organism. Marcus stared at the vials, hardly daring to believe that a solution might actually exist. Has this treatment worked on other animals? We've had promising results with smaller creatures, Dr. Chun said carefully. But we've never attempted it on an infestation of this scale or severity. The process would need to be done gradually over several sessions to avoid shock to the host organism system. What would you need to attempt the treatment? Marcus asked. Dr. Chen considered the question. I would need direct access to the animal, a controlled environment where we could apply the treatment safely, and a way to monitor the creature's vital signs throughout the process. It would also help to have a complete medical history and any information about the host species' typical physiological responses. Marcus realized he was at a critical decision point. He could continue to try to hide Seraphina's true nature, but that might prevent Dr. Chun from providing the most effective treatment. Or he could trust this dedicated scientist with the truth and hope that her compassion for suffering animals would override any fear or skepticism she might have about dragons. Dr. Chun, Marcus said slowly, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible, but I need you to trust that I'm telling the truth. The animal in these photos is not a marine mammal. She's a dragon, and she's the only family I've ever known. Dr. Chen stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. A dragon, she repeated. An albino dragon who found me as an infant and raised me as her own child, Marcus continued. She's over 800 years old, and she's the most gentle, intelligent, loving creature I've ever known. These barnacles are killing her, and I can't stand by and watch her suffer. To Marcus's surprise, Dr. Chun didn't laugh or call for security. Instead, she sat down heavily in her chair and rubbed her temples. In 30 years of marine research, I've seen things that most people would consider impossible. Giant squids in the deep ocean, fish that communicate through bioluminescence, coral reefs that seem to have their own intelligence. She looked up at Marcus with serious eyes. If what you're telling me is true, then we're dealing with a completely unknown species with unique biological characteristics. That would actually explain some of the unusual features I noticed in your photographs. So you'll help? Marcus asked, hardly daring to hope. I'll help, Dr. Chen said, but you need to understand the risks. We'll be attempting an experimental treatment on a creature whose physiology I don't fully understand. There's a chance the treatment could make things worse, or that the shock to her system could be dangerous. Marcus nodded. She's dying anyway. At least this gives her a chance. Dr. Chun began gathering equipment and supplies. We'll need to transport the enzyme solution and the ultrasonic equipment to your location. I'll also need to bring monitoring devices to track her responses to the treatment. There's one more thing, Marcus said. The location where she lives is completely hidden from the outside world. You'll need to trust me to guide you there, and you'll need to promise that you'll never reveal what you've seen to anyone else. I've spent my career protecting marine animals from exploitation and harm, Dr. Chen replied. If your mother is real, then she deserves the same protection I would give to any endangered species. As they prepared for the journey back to Serafina, Marcus felt a mixture of hope and terror. He had found a potential solution, but he was also about to expose the secret that he and his mother had guarded for over 20 years. Everything would depend on whether Dr. Chen's experimental treatment could save Serafina's life without causing her additional harm. The return journey took 2 days, with Dr. Chen following Marcus in her own research vessel loaded with equipment. As they approached the hidden cove, Marcus sent out a mental call to his mother, letting her know that he was returning with help. Serafina's response was weak, but filled with love and relief. She had been worried about him every moment he was away, and the stress of separation had made her condition noticeably worse. When Marcus finally saw her waiting in the shallow water, his heart broke at how much she had deteriorated in just a week. The barnacles seemed to have grown thicker and more numerous, and Serafina's breathing was more labored than before. But when she saw Marcus approaching with Dr. Chen, her golden eyes brightened with curiosity and hope. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen," Marcus said aloud as he waded into the water beside his mother. "She's a marine biologist who specializes in treating parasitic infestations. I've told her about your condition, and she thinks she might be able to help." Dr. Chen stood on the shore for several minutes, simply staring in amazement at the magnificent creature before her. Despite the horrible barnacle infestation, Serafina's grace and intelligence were unmistakable. When the dragon turned her great head to look directly at the scientist, Dr. Chen felt a sense of communication that went beyond words. "She's beautiful," Dr. Chen whispered. "Even with all those parasites, she's the most magnificent creature I've ever seen." Serafina spoke telepathically to Marcus, who translated for Dr. Chen. "She says thank you for coming so far to help her. She wants you to know that she's grateful for your willingness to try, even if the treatment doesn't work." Dr. Chen wiped away tears that had formed in her eyes. "Tell her that we're going to do everything possible to help her feel better. But I need to examine her more closely to determine the best way to proceed with the treatment." As Dr. Chen began her examination, documenting the extent of the infestation and testing Serafina's responses to gentle touch, Marcus realized that they were about to embark on the most crucial phase of their battle against the barnacles. The next few days would determine whether his desperate journey had been worth the risk, and whether the love between a human son and his dragon mother would be strong enough to overcome the forces that threatened to tear them apart. The treatment began at dawn on a calm morning when the waters of the cove were perfectly still. Dr. Chen had spent the previous day carefully examining Serafina and planning the most effective approach. The dragon's condition was worse than anything the scientist had ever encountered, with thousands of barnacles covering nearly 70% of her body surface. Marcus stood waist-deep in the warm water beside his mother, providing comfort and emotional support while Dr. Chen prepared the enzyme solution. The first phase of the treatment would involve applying the specialized enzymes to small sections of barnacles, testing Serafina's response before proceeding with larger areas. "Remember," Dr. Chen said as she filled the first applicator with a clear enzyme solution, "we need to go slowly. If she shows any signs of distress or adverse reaction, we'll stop immediately and reassess." Serafina remained perfectly still as Dr. Chen began applying the enzyme solution to a cluster of barnacles near her left shoulder. The solution looked like ordinary water, but within minutes, Marcus could see changes beginning to occur. The barnacles' dark shells began to lose their glossy appearance, and their grip on Serafina's scales appeared to be weakening. After 30 minutes, Dr. Chen gently touched one of the treated barnacles with a soft brush. To everyone's amazement, it fell away cleanly, leaving behind a slightly pink patch of scale that looked healthy and unharmed. Serafina let out a low rumble of what seemed like relief. "It's working," Marcus whispered, hardly daring to believe what he was seeing. Dr. Chun continued the treatment methodically, applying the enzyme solution to progressively larger areas and monitoring Seraphina's vital signs with portable equipment. The dragon's heart rate and breathing remained steady, and she showed no signs of pain or distress from the process. The work was slow and painstaking. Each application of enzymes needed time to work before the barnacles could be safely removed, and Dr. Chun insisted on waiting between treatments to ensure that Seraphina's system wasn't being overwhelmed. By the end of the first day, they had successfully cleared about 10% of the infestation. That evening, as they took a break from the treatment, Marcus could already see improvement in his mother's condition. The areas where barnacles had been removed showed healthy, gleaming white scales, and Seraphina seemed to move with less discomfort than she had in months. "How do you feel, Mother?" Marcus asked telepathically. Seraphina's mental voice was stronger than it had been in weeks. "Like I'm beginning to remember what it feels like to be alive," she responded. "Dr. Chen's treatment is giving me hope for the first time in months." The second day brought new challenges. As they worked on removing barnacles from more sensitive areas around Seraphina's neck and face, Dr. Chun had to be extremely careful to avoid any contact with the dragon's eyes or gill slits. The enzyme solution was powerful enough that even small amounts in the wrong place could cause serious problems. Marcus proved invaluable during this delicate work. His lifetime of experience with his mother's body and behavior allowed him to anticipate her movements and help Dr. Chin position the equipment safely. More importantly, his presence kept Seraphina calm and relaxed during procedures that would have been stressful for any creature. On the third day, Dr. Chun introduced the ultrasonic component of the treatment. She had brought a specialized device that generated specific sound frequencies designed to disrupt the barnacles' ability to maintain their hold on their host. The machine looked like a large underwater speaker, and Dr. Chun positioned it carefully in the water near the areas they were treating. The ultrasonic frequencies were too high for human ears to detect, but Marcus could see that Seraphina heard them clearly. Her head tilted slightly as the sounds began, and she looked curious rather than distressed. The frequencies are designed to match the natural vibrations that occur when fish clean barnacles from whales and other large marine animals, Dr. Chin explained. They should help loosen the barnacle's grip without causing any discomfort. The combination of enzyme treatment and ultrasonic therapy proved to be incredibly effective. Barnacles that had been stubbornly attached for months began falling away in large clusters. By the end of the third day, more than half of the infestation had been successfully removed. Marcus was amazed by the transformation in his mother's appearance and behavior. As more of her natural white scales were revealed, Seraphina's inherent majesty became apparent again. Her movements became more fluid and graceful, and her breathing became easier and more regular. The most dramatic moment came on the fourth day when Dr. Chun began working on the barnacles that had covered Seraphina's wings. These had been among the most problematic, as they severely restricted her ability to fly. As the last of the wing barnacles fell away, Seraphina slowly extended her wings to their full span for the first time in months. The sight took Marcus's breath away. His mother's wings stretched nearly 100 feet from tip to tip, the membrane between the wing bones gleaming like mother of pearl in the morning sunlight. Dr. Chun stood transfixed, tears streaming down her face as she witnessed the full glory of a healthy dragon. "I never imagined," Dr. Chun whispered. "In all my dreams of discovering new species, I never imagined anything like this." Seraphina folded her wings carefully, being mindful of the humans in the water around her. Then she lowered her great head until she was nearly touching Dr. Chun, breathing gently on the scientist's face in a gesture of gratitude and affection. Marcus translated his mother's telepathic words. "She says that your kindness and skill have given her back her life. She wants you to know that you will always be welcome in this place, and that she considers you part of our family." Dr. Chen reached out tentatively to touch Seraphina's snout, marveling at the warmth and smoothness of the dragon's scales. Tell her that this has been the greatest privilege of my life. To help heal such a magnificent creature, to witness such intelligence and grace, it's beyond anything I ever hoped to accomplish. The final day of treatment focused on the remaining barnacles in hard-to-reach areas and ensuring that no parasites had been missed. Dr. Chun was meticulous in her work, knowing that even a small number of remaining barnacles could potentially restart the infestation cycle. As the sun began to set on their 5th day of treatment, Dr. Chun applied the last of the enzyme solution to a final cluster of stubborn barnacles near the base of Seraphina's tail. When these last parasites fell away, the dragon was completely free of the infestation that had nearly killed her. Seraphina moved through the water with a joy and energy that Marcus hadn't seen in almost a year. She dove beneath the surface and emerged in a spray of droplets that caught the light like thousands of diamonds. Her movements were fluid and powerful, reminiscent of the magnificent creature who had raised Marcus from infancy. That evening, Seraphina insisted on taking Marcus and Dr. Chun for a flight around their hidden cove. Dr. Chun had initially been terrified at the prospect of riding on a dragon's back, but Seraphina's gentle nature and Marcus's confidence eventually convinced her to try. Flying through the sunset sky on Seraphina's back, with a vast ocean spread out below them, Dr. Chun experienced a sense of wonder and freedom that she had never imagined possible. The dragon's flight was smooth and controlled, and her obvious joy in being able to fly again was infectious. "This is how she's supposed to be," Marcus called out over the wind. "Strong and free and happy. Thank you for giving her back to me." When they landed back in the cove, Dr. Chun began packing up her equipment, preparing to return to her research station. But before leaving, she spent time documenting everything she had learned about dragon physiology and the treatment process. Her notes would help her develop even better treatments for future cases, though she hoped no other dragon would ever have to suffer as Seraphina had. "I want to stay in contact," Dr. Chun said as she prepared to leave. "Not for research purposes, but as friends. What you've shared with me is precious beyond words, and I want to make sure Seraphina stays healthy." Marcus nodded gratefully. "We'd like that too. And if you ever encounter other animals with similar infestations, we want to help. Mother says her kind has ways of treating diseases that your science might find useful." As Dr. Chen's boat disappeared over the horizon, Marcus and Seraphina settled together on their favorite beach to watch the stars emerge. The dragon's scales gleamed in the moonlight, completely free of the barnacles that had caused her so much suffering. "I was so scared I was going to lose you," Marcus said, resting his hand on his mother's warm flank. Seraphina's mental voice was full of love and pride. "You saved my life, my dear son. Your courage and determination reminded me why I chose to raise you all those years ago. You have grown into a man worthy of the dragon blood that flows in your heart, if not in your veins." Marcus smiled at his mother's words. He had always known he was different from other humans, not just because of his unusual upbringing, but because of the courage and loyalty that Seraphina had instilled in him. The journey to save her had tested every skill she had taught him and every value she had instilled in him. 6 months later, Marcus received a message from Dr. Chun reporting that she had successfully treated 3 whales and a large sea turtle using the techniques they had developed together. The enzyme solution had been refined and improved, and the ultrasonic therapy was being tested at research stations around the world. More importantly, she reported that several other dragons had quietly contacted her through intermediaries, seeking treatment for various health issues. It seemed that Seraphina's story had spread through the hidden dragon community, and Dr. Chun was becoming known as a scientist who could be trusted with their secrets. For Marcus and Seraphina, life had returned to the peaceful rhythm they had always known. The dragon's health remained perfect, with no sign of any returning barnacles or other problems. They spent their days exploring the ocean depths, soaring through the clouds, and sharing the quiet contentment that came from having faced a terrible challenge together and emerged stronger than ever. The experience had taught Marcus that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to accept the unacceptable. His mother had raised him to be brave, compassionate, and determined, and when she needed those qualities most, he had been able to give them back to her in full measure. As they flew together through the evening sky, Marcus reflected on how their bond had been tested and proven unbreakable. In saving his mother's life, he had discovered the true meaning of family, courage, and the power of love to overcome even the most impossible challenges.